All righty. So for those that have not watched or experienced the Seat at the Table show, it's a show created to effectively equip and educate the next generation of cybersecurity leaders based off of the experience that all of our different guests bring to the show. We believe that technical skills get you in the room, and we've been talking about this all day. Your technical skills will get you the job of a leader, of a manager, of a director, even of a VP. But ultimately, it's going to be your business skills and your business acumen and your ability to communicate and build teams and build cultures, and find talent in places that you probably wouldn't have found them in the past. That's what's going to earn you a seat at the table, because that's what's going to ingratiate you to the business. That's what's going to help you enable the business. That's what's going to help you build the types of messaging that the business can actually understand and that will translate at the highest levels. And that's what the show is about, is equipping people with those skills. And I think we did all of that and more today. And there are a lot of questions that came in, some of them from our own panelists. And we're going to just hop right on in. So, starting with the first question, and I'll let any of you guys answer this, and I'm going to be reading some of these things verbatim. We're hearing about attacks and breaches in the headlines almost daily, and it becomes a joke in our community that within 24 hours, vendors are going to be flooding your inboxes with messages about their product potentially being the preventative solution. I can actually say I have messages in my inbox from a certain company that is in the headlines today and how we could have prevented X, Y, and Z's attack. So it happens. What should sales and marketing professional know that the security community would want when it comes to how to sell to our community after an incident? Anyone that wants to jump in, feel free to jump in. I'd like to hear kind of both perspective, the marketing perspective, as well as the security leaders. And I can pick on someone as well. So let me go with you, Jason. Oh, I'll go with you next, Beatrice.
Actually, can you go with Beatrice? I was interrupted by an incident. Everything's an incident when you're a CISO. I had an incident. Sure, it only lasted 30 seconds, but I had an incident. Please go with Beatrice. My apologies.
No
Here, I know everyone has their thoughts. They're figuring out what to say first, since it is recorded, right? So this was my question as I think the marketer in the room. I see it. And I'm like, come on, we can't be the butt of the joke, everyone. We have to be better. We can't be the next screenshot on LinkedIn with our names redacted, but everything else is just such a facepalm. So when I built my company, or sorry, when I built my teams, at least, it was all about training. It's all, I didn't want to gate, kind of like to Naomi's point, I didn't want to gate like, oh, you've never marketed or sold to cybersecurity folks? You got to go. It's more, do you have the chops? Do you have the tenacity? And also, are you willing to learn? More important to that, do you have empathy in there? Do you empathize that CISOs and their directs are at any given time pulled into an incident, just like what Jason said? Do you have the empathy to understand that you're one of many other vendor messages going on, and how do you stand out rather than be the next, like, we could have prevented that? So it's usually just what are we doing? What's our vertical? How are we positioning ourselves? And then what makes us different? Let's stop using the same buzzwords. Let's make something different. If you ever see me at RSA, I'm not at the booth for a reason. I'm not the next whiskey tasting event. We're also trying to see what do you need? And it's no longer just that booth or that thing or that swag. That's how I like to approach it. But this is why I'm also hearing, what do you need to hear from vendors? It's like, what do you need to see from them to help you understand that we're not the other one. We're not just the Gartner cool vendor or best vendor out there or something else. All right. I hope that's enough time for everyone to develop their own answer.
Does anybody else want to jump in on this one?
I think one of the things that I think about is which are you talking about? One, are you reaching out to the company that just got breached? Because they're not going to be responding. Just as an FYI, if they're in the middle of a response, their number one priority is going to be that response. to make sure that their company is protected, to make sure that they're doing their due diligence and due care, and to make sure that they're able to move forward. Then you may get a PR response, but definitely if you're reaching out directly to the security professionals, those security professionals are going to go directly to the delete and more than likely in the block category, because it is wholly quite frankly, unprofessional to reach out to somebody in a crisis to tell them that you could have done it better. I also, before kind of digging into it, I want to express that there's a couple of different ways that people respond when someone is in the news for having a breach. And I just want to remind everyone to give grace. I mean, if anybody's ever been through an incident or a potential incident and have been in that war room and been on with legal counsel and been in the sticks, it's a stressful situation, and it could happen to literally anyone on this call. So just remember to give grace when all of these potential issues come up and we're experiencing it. And I say that as well to the suppliers out there. Give grace to the companies that are experiencing that, not just the companies that you're trying to reach out to because they were just breached and I could have fixed this thing, but also to the other companies that you're reaching out to say they were breached. I could have fixed it. I can fix that for you, because we're also dealing sometimes with, well, the board's wanting to know what's going on. Were we protected against this? How does this happen? What, like we're trying to figure out how this happened too. Did it impact us? Was it a supplier? I mean, we're talking specifically about one thing right now, but it could be a whole array of things that could have happened there. And so if you are and I saw this advice in the chat, so I just want to kind of like emphasize it as well. Wait. Like there's a time and there's a place, and that time and that place is not in the middle of a crisis. Wait till after the crisis, and maybe not use it as like I could have done better, because whenever I'm on calls and I hear the statements that say, I don't mean to throw shade on my components or my competitors out there, but and then proceeds to throw shade at them. It always puts me off. It always makes me take a step back, because we're all in this together. We're a community. And if we don't start treating each other as a community, even whenever something's happened, or if we have somebody contacting us in the middle of something happening, we have to start treating each other as that community base. So that's my advice.
I love it. I would say that when there is a major cyber attack, we are all impacted. If we're in that same vertical or industry, we're even more impacted. Because yes, we're having to answer questions. How did it happen? Can it happen to us? That's the question we always get. Are we an exposure? Can this happen to us? And then we have to not just say no, or say yes, potentially. We have to be able to prove it and demonstrate it and be prepared to say it to every supplier, every customer, the board, the list goes on and on. So yeah, it is impactful for everybody. Jason, you're using the hand raise feature, which is so polite of you. That's all yours, man.
I've had this question asked to me in a few different conferences about, what can salespeople do better to hit cybersecurity? And I'll tell you, and I don't mean this as angrily as it might sound. I mean this with a smile on my face. Stop asking me to tell you how to do your job. That's number one. And there's three things. What I can tell you is three things that I don't like as a CISO. Be transparent on your LinkedIn requests. I see fake titles come up and it's, oh, I'm a connoisseur of security. Next thing I know, hey, have you seen my new product? Oh, I don't use LinkedIn to listen to sales pitches. I go to conferences for that. Number two, stop quid pro quoing me with Yetis. They're not that cool. They're not that great. But the idea of a quid pro quo, hey, you want a free Yeti? Do you want a free $50? I'm a CISO. I don't need it. And no, I'm not going to fall for that. And it's kind of offensive to me. And lastly, stop thinking it's 2008 or 2010, and please stop cold calling me. There's better channels. I don't know what they are. I'm not a salesperson, but I know that cold calling is not the way to do it. So those are kind of my three takeaways for salespeople trying to hit up cybersecurity.
And I had to look around, make sure I didn't have any Yetis in sight before I left. I think we've all gotten a few. At a certain point, it's just too many. Let's move on to the next question. This ties into some of the things that Bobby said, Naomi said. What out of the box places have you guys found success when looking to bring on new talent onto your teams. All right, go ahead, Jason.
I want to pile on with one thing that Naomi hit out that I was like, yes, I look for anyone with service industry background, not just because of the multitasking that she talked about. I used to be a bartender myself, but it's the idea of customer service. You can talk to people in all race, color, creed, gender, and handle multiple things at once, which is a lot like security. So anything on a resume that I look for, if you have service experience, you're automatically at the top of the pile. So I just wanted to back up what Naomi said.
I can
To
add
add to what Jason was talking about a little bit, one of my first interviews within cybersecurity, I had all the technical background and the response that I was supposed to have during the interview. I thought I was prepared, and then all of a sudden the conversation with the person who was interviewing me went back to my grocery store experience from when I was in high school and college. And it just so happens that the individual also worked at that place as well. And that's what we talked about for 30 minutes, and very similar, Jason, to what you're talking about. It was a service industry experience that I was totally not aware that he was going to be interested in. And that's what we ended up talking about, and I ended up getting the job after that as well.
Anybody else want to share where they found talent?
I find talent in educators.
Mm-hmm.
Especially a big part of their job is to educate and to help others understand why. And what better way to do that than to tap into people that was their job.
Agreed. And, I believe that there is not a single job out there, and I literally mean a single job that doesn't have something that translates into something that we need in security. I've helped pilots go from being a pilot to a cybersecurity analyst because they have situational awareness. They can look at a bunch of blinking lights and make sense of it all. They are used to, continuous education. They're definitely calm under pressure, right? And that's just pilot. You can go garbage man. They're dealing with crap all the time, and they're still okay with coming to work every day. I mean, we could think of all types of jobs and how they could translate and I used to run a resume service where I would literally help them translate those things so that they could ingratiate themselves to potential employers. Anybody else want to share any before we go ahead, Mark? On the year.
I mean, I'm open, for any part of the business, anybody who's willingness to learn, you'll get them there. But I found my strongest talent come from the technical side, from the IT side. They're already familiar and they can get up to speed pretty fast, and they can go into some more the higher technical level roles a lot faster than, we want to bring folks in, entry level, but sometimes it takes a little longer. So I have found that IT are certainly some of the ones that do a lot faster coming into cybersecurity.
I was just going to add something. Shockingly, you guys, you may not believe it, but I have worked in IT as well. So I do have a little bit of background, a little bit of experience. So I have hired people. So in my experience, I look for folks who deal with adversity very well, who are able to manage change as well, and who are extremely resilient. So it's not necessarily, their experience on the technical side, but I look for their experience when they've dealt with a lot of tense situations, a lot of change management situations, which they had to react pretty quickly. So I found that those people are able to deal with a lot of those late breaking situations when things really hit the fan. They're able to deal with it cool and calm and collective.
Hey, Jerich, I'm going to maybe switch things up a little bit here. Something that folks are saying kind of reminds me of, okay, well, what about us for security leadership roles or CISO roles? And maybe we'll play a little bit of a reverso around here. I've got a question for you here, Jerich, based on something somebody asked in Slack, and then for other people here as well, after I comment on it. And somebody asked, hey, well, what are some of the challenges that we've maybe encountered on the path towards a senior security position or a CISO position? And one of the things, I've interviewed for many CISO positions, security roles over the years, and I've declined more than I've taken. And it's usually because I had one interview once for a CISO position, and the job sounded fine and great, but the person to whom I would be reporting was something just didn't feel right. I couldn't quite describe it, or I probably still can't completely articulate it, but just something wasn't right. The comp was good, the pay was good, the role was good, but just that reporting relationship. And I just had my reservations. So I decided not to take that one. Now, of course, it opened up other opportunities in the future. So I think that's one of the challenges that I've seen smaller companies, startups, even larger enterprises, when they're hiring their first CISO, second CISO, or other senior security role, they don't know what they want. They think that they want a unicorn, somebody that could do everything. I've gone into some of these interviews where I'm being asked really TCP/IP level, bit level packet type of questions. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, I thought this was a CISO role, but it's more of an indication of where they're at as an organization. So turning it back to you guys, hey, well, starting with you, Jerich, you've had a number of senior leadership roles. What's been some of your challenges in terms of some of those roles that you've taken or not taken in the past?
That's a great question, and thanks for putting me on the spot there, Frank. So at first, I would say expectations. To your point, what are those expectations, and why is this role open all of a sudden? Now, sometimes it's the first time, and if it's the first time, why is it the first time? Are we just not maturing to this point? Did something occur? Has an audit forced you to do this, or do you realize you really want to care about security now? And depending on how you answer those questions, will change my line of questioning. I like that you talked about turning it down. We are choosing our employers just as much as our employers are choosing us. So I ask a ton of questions to understand that. Additionally, what do they think the role is going to be, and how much autonomy do I have to transform that when I get in? So through the questions that I'm going to ask, I'm going to try to find out, well, how is security disabling the business, not enabling the business? Because I'm assuming that's probably why I'm here, right? I'm going to ask questions around what are our customers asking for us from a security perspective, or how do we answer those questions? I'm going to ask, how often do people on my team see advancement, or do they see advancement? So I'm going to ask these types of questions that will start to help me shape what I'm getting myself into. Ideally, I like to interview and talk to my team that I'm going to be inheriting. Not every organization will let you do that because they know what you're going to be inheriting. But that's also something that I like to do. And I have also turned down positions, sometimes for comp, right? I'll just throw some numbers out here. If someone says the CISO is getting $100,000, that's not a CISO. Right, that is a security manager that is at the top of the IT security chain, but that is not a CISO, and there's a difference between the two titles. Reporting structure is one that is really hot topic, and we're going to talk about whether you should talk to CISO, to a CIO or a CTO, or I mean, there's a lot of conversation there, but ultimately, do I have visibility all the way to the top if I need it? Right, those are the types of questions that I'm going to be asking, and will I actually be able to affect change? And more recently, starting to talk about insurance, quite frankly. And what happens if the bad thing happens and you guys decide that you accepted a risk, but I have no way of communicating that to the public. So now I'm the CISO that is on the chain because the bad thing occurred. What protections do I have in place for situations like that? Those are some of the newer conversations, but those are things that you have to start asking these days because there's the whole CSO as a chief scapegoat officer. That's what's happening a lot these days. So more CISOs are taking precautions to protect themselves. I'd love to hear what other people think on this one.
I'll
Yeah.
chime in there. I like what Jerich said about the insurance. I like asking like who takes the blame if something were to happen, if an incident were to happen, who takes the blame? And I also asked the follow-up question, who's ultimately accountable for cybersecurity? Is it at the board level? Is it the CEO, et cetera? So I always like to ask that just to figure out where exactly do they care about? How high does security go in terms of visibility, board level reporting, et cetera?
Kevin, I saw a few smirks coming from you. Curious what your thoughts are on this one.
Yeah, one thing that I love having a conversation about is not only what's the view upward, but also what does the team look like? What does the morale look like? And it was actually something that we just talked about in the Cyber 42 game as well. The quote unquote fake company that we were all CISOs of was a company that really only had 2 cybersecurity folks, and their morale was a little bit low. So what am I walking into? Very much like what you were just talking about, not only looking up, but also trying to look at what the team is going to do to make the whole cybersecurity team successful as well. And that's really good to understand from the folks that you're talking to. I noticed during interviews, folks are fairly honest many times when you're interviewing them, you're interviewing the company. They'll tell you if things are really good or if they're like, things aren't going as well as planned right now. And then you have an assessment that you need to do internally as well.
Anybody else? Jason?
This is great discussion. one of the questions I think going into any CISO position is budget and budget control, because
Mm.
that's ultimately what it always comes down to, me having to beg, plead, scrape, tell the right story, give the right metric, find the right lever, which everything that we're talking to today feeds into that, is how do I get the right budget? So that's one of the things I look for in the role.
I like it. Barbie or Mark, any thoughts on this one?
It's
Um,
so it's nice to honestly, it's nice to hear that like the same challenges across the board, because I as well have turned down as well as you're going through the process and you're having those conversations. One of the things that I try to do as a hiring manager is that first conversation that I have with individuals is, this is a conversation of, is this job what you want to do? And does my needs for this job fit your career path and what you want long term, and vice versa? Is your history, is your passions, is your aspirations match what I need this job role to do? And so that conversation right there as well has fed into my own conversations. And I love the fact that it was brought up that to ask for additional, I don't think I think it's very rare. But as an executive leader, at some point you have to start asking for the people you want to talk to within the company to really understand what you're walking into. And sometimes that's going to be outside of the purview of the few potential people that they're going to line up for you. So I loved that that was called out as well. But absolutely, everybody is right on target so far. And I don't know if I have anything else to add, but.
Yeah, I can add on real quick. It's just my opinion. You know, as you look, I think, you know, seeing a lot of media out there about senior from cybersecurity because of the pressure that's expected upon them because of the demand of, you know, having to be available 24/7. So I would certainly be, you know, asking some questions down that avenue as to, you know, like you said, Jerich, is, you know, what happened to the previous CISO? What's the expectation? What's my resources? Are we going to be expanding? Because the last thing I would want to do is put myself in a position of failure before I've even, you know, stepped into the role. So that's certainly something top of mind right now with what I'm seeing out there.
That's a good segue into another question that I saw come in. The CISO job is historically known to be a very stressful job for a lot of reasons, right? What are you guys doing for self-care?
I could jump in on my team. In fact, probably not my own self-care, but it's for my team's self-care. So we have a rotation, and it's always been like this within any team I've been a part of. There's a rotation that includes nights and weekends, right? So if there's an incident, somebody gets called. But something I always make sure I do is if somebody does get called over the weekend, and especially if it ends up being more than, let's just say, 5 or 10 minutes worth of work, and hey, within cybersecurity, that could absolutely be it. I don't want to burn out the team in that sense. So what I'll do is I'll say, hey, take some time off. Just let me know when that day is. You don't have to go through the typical channels. I want to make sure that you have the time for yourself that you absolutely deserve as well. And I think that's been really helpful for the team. And it's also been helpful for myself as well, because what I'm trying to do there is avoid burnout for the team members. And if I could avoid team out or burnout for the team members, that allows us to be successful as well. So something that I think everyone could think about and potentially ask your own group as well, if they want to have some time, especially after, let's just say, the non-9 to 5 incidents, for them to recoup and to regenerate a little bit.
Yeah, completely agree. You know, going back to the team first, you know, if it's nature, we have to, you know, sometimes work weekends, but first and foremost, I make sure they get comp time straight away. You know, if they've worked a long weekend, they got to compensate on that on a Monday or whatever it may be. You know, and enforce that, you know, all of their paid time off is to be taken and that they need to disconnect. And then as it relates to my personal, you know, it's really got to disconnect. You got to step away from the technology. We've got family, we've got friends, spend time, get into nature, you know, get out there, go on vacation, you know, all these things help, you know, make sure you've got hobbies. You know, because, you know, the work you leave on Friday is going to be there on Monday, no matter whether you do it on the weekend or not. So, you know, it's really about stepping away, disconnecting, and doing some things that, you know, you enjoy and puts a smile on your face.
Yeah, I'd like to add something as well. I've worked with some CISOs in the past, and one of the things I try to emphasize, because it's a highly friction-based environment, is to set boundaries. Make sure you set those boundaries and stay true to them. But I also recommend a resource for them as well. And one of them is called The High Five Habit by Mel Robbins. It's an incredible book. I really like it a lot. I've read it a couple times, but I also recommend it for a lot of other people, especially CISOs. And it's really you're as a CISO, you're a leader, you have a lot of responsibility and you have to look after a lot of people, but who's really looking after you? And so this high five habit really literally teaches you how to support yourself by giving yourself a high five. And there's a lot of science behind that. But I really recommend that that's a book that a lot of CISOs, anybody who's a leader, take a look at. It's an incredible book. And it really teaches you to support yourself and gives you techniques to do it yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Jason, you're teaching me how to work with you because you put the hand up when you want to say something. So in the future, I will only call on you when I see the hand up.
Okay,
By the
that
way, this
sounds
is how
great.
you influence up people, lead by example. Jason.
I wanted to kind of pile on a little bit to Kevin's comments about spreading out his work among the team. That succession planning is something too, as a CISO or as a leader, day one, if you're on a new team, or even if you've been with the team for a while, because that helps spread the work. If you have Brents on your team, which is a Phoenix Project reference, if you have a Brent on your team, you've got a problem. So there's one SME that can only handle the tool in that incident. That's a problem. You need to spread that out. And your responsibility as a CISO, and it's how you're going to bring people up and get them to be better and eventually build CISOs on your team. So that to the point that within my goal is year one, I'm not the incident. I'm not running the incidents to the executives after year one, that I can farm that out to somebody else when I'm on vacation. Obviously it's my role and it's my job, but so that's an example, is make sure that you're have succession planning in place at almost any level. And I know that's a little bit of a luxury if you're a smaller team of only 2 or 3, can't really do it. But as soon as you get over, like, I'd say 7 or 8, start thinking that.
I love it. So there's another question that came in. I think this is a powerful one, so I'm hoping everybody can answer it, and I'll go first. Someone said, so as rock stars, I don't necessarily consider myself to be a rock star, but as rock stars, have you guys ever experienced imposter syndrome? Yes.
Every
2 days
day. I didn't raise my hand.
I was like, when's
Every
the last
day.
time I've looked at my watch? Should I really be on this summit having this conversation? These people are way better than me. What am I doing? Right? Like, these all the time.
One of the best advice I ever got was from my old CTO, and it was true. It's fake it till you make it. It is absolutely true. You're never ready for CISO. No one's, what class am I going to take? What do I need to do you're never going to be ready. You throw them into the fire and here you go, and you learn it. Fake it till you make it.
So I want to add to that, actually. So fake it till you make it. And if you feel like you're in imposter syndrome, that's likely that you're growing. So we always have to push ourselves outside of our bounds. If, Naomi, to your point earlier, nobody's going to do it. Not many people want to do a job and do the job for the rest of their lives and never do anything different. Most people want to grow. They want to develop, they want to learn, but it's the same for us. So I just wanted to tack on to that, not only fake it till you make it, but also embrace imposter syndrome, because it means you're in growth. And I have imposter syndrome all the time. Every time that I have a talk, I literally walk around the room, and the thing that's rolling in my head is, they're gonna know I don't know what I'm talking about. It's gonna be terrible. It's gonna be terrible. You know what? Shush. Let me just say what I have to say. And if you can overcome that, that's one thing. And you can really embrace that. But yeah, it's getting outside your comfort zone.
Following in Jason's, I raised my hand too. I agree with Barbie and Jason here, because think about the opposite. If you don't have imposter syndrome, I think it's called like Dunning-Kruger, where you don't know what you don't know. So you can't tell yourself if you're bad at something. I don't think I got that right. So it's almost a good thing to have imposter syndrome, but to a certain extent, as if you're still fairly confident in what you're saying and you're able to influence and persuade, that's still good. But you never want to cross that line and be like, oh, my poop doesn't stink and I'm amazing at everything and everyone worship me. Like, that's not the attitude you want, because then you're not learning, and then maybe you don't know everything. So
Related to what you guys were saying, 18 years ago, right? I was terrified of public speaking, hated public speaking. I always spoke in meetings, internal to team and so on. But in terms of speaking in front of a large audience, had never done it, was absolutely horrified by it, right? I was the typical cliche of, the person that's more afraid of public speaking than death. And, I just, it's to that imposter syndrome, right? Yeah, for probably years, right? When I would get on stage, I was like, why am I talking to all of these people? And it was, you guys said it, fake it till you make it, but, it was that typical advice of practice, 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 right? If something makes you uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable, as you guys are saying, hey, that might be something that we probably want to focus on. Keep on doing that.
Yeah, well, for me, it's hard not to have imposter syndrome being on a panel with such esteemed folks here. But yeah, you get it all the time. I had it, I've had it plenty of times. I've had my share. And one thing that helps me out is that even though you can prepare as much as you can, you have to let go of perfectionism. You have to just be able to just be real, be yourself, be authentic, and don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to show people who you are. And so those are some of the things that I use to at least combat that imposter syndrome. But just knowing that that happens, embrace it. Just like what Barbie said earlier, you got to embrace it.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, someone else?
So I was just going to add in,
Yeah.
I think everybody else said, to basically, I think we, like you mentioned, we all get it. I think the reality is in cybersecurity, we just can't know it all, and it continues to grow more and more each day. And sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know, give me a day and I'll be back and I'll let you know what it is, or I'll go and find the right personnel. But the reality of what we're doing, and it's okay to fail. If we're not failing, we're not growing, and I think I've heard it multiple times throughout the sessions today. So, I think it's a great thing. Cybersecurity is just so overwhelming, and tomorrow there's a new thing, and we just have to keep learning and growing.
So I'm gonna make a statement, then I'm gonna ask a question for participation from all of you guys. I think imposter syndrome can come from not having confidence in what you know, but also in not having confidence in who you are. So an example is, I am a millennial that is often in rooms with Gen Xers and baby boomers, and I'm advising them, I'm leading them. And I have to ask myself, like, should I be having this conversation with them, right? If as a leader, sometimes you're like a parent and sometimes you're like a counselor to the people that work for you. So I am a counselor to this person that's 2 times my age. That doesn't necessarily feel right sometimes, right? So it just comes with the gig, it comes with the job. So my question for all of you guys, and just a show of hands, how many of you guys have been in a meeting, somebody has said a term or something that you didn't know anything about, and you quickly Googled it so that you can figure out what they were saying beforehand, right? Everybody out there, you're doing it, we're all doing it. Now, how well you do it so people don't know you're doing it, that is what determines your success when you do it, but it comes with the job. We're learning
Can
as
I
we grow.
Can I throw something in there right there?
Yeah.
So I've actually found a lot of success in many times when those terms are being thrown out and those acronyms are being thrown out. You're not the only one. So there's often times that I've stopped and slowed down the conversation and said, hey, for the benefit of everyone here, just pardon my ignorance. I'm so sorry. But can you describe what you're talking about real quick so that I'm up to speed with you? And a lot of times that'll slow the conversation down, and then I'll receive like 80,000 messages that says, oh my God, I had no idea what's going on. I thought I was the only one. But if you slow that down and you start being authentic in those conversations and admit to like, hey, I know that this is a terminology that might be internal, it may be a company term, it may not be, I'm Googling it, it's not showing up. How do I, like, what information am I looking at here? It's been really helpful.
Kevin.
One thing to add, and one thing I've noticed that really helped me as well in terms of gaining some leadership experience, was totally outside of my full-time job. It was doing volunteer leadership. So something similar to what Frank was talking about a little bit earlier. I was also deathly afraid of public speaking. So I joined a public speaking group, and I didn't realize when I joined that public speaking group, they also had a leadership component associated with it as well. Toastmasters, for those who aren't familiar with it. And I ended up doing the leadership side of Toastmasters along with trying to practice my public speaking. And it ended up being very interesting because I got to deal with problems that I deal with now as a leader as well, with maybe people not being happy with some of the things that we were doing in meetings, maybe not paying dues, for example, and having to have those conversations, what end up being awkward conversations of, yeah, hey, we can't have you be a member here if you're not paying, for example. And although it's very different than what we're doing right now in cybersecurity, it practiced me for the tough conversations I need to have as a leader as well. So I would highly recommend, if you have a volunteer opportunity within your local community or online as well, that might be a great opportunity for you to practice some leadership along the way too. And it's very away from cybersecurity. You know, it's not your paycheck, right? So you get to practice your own your own leadership ability and find out where some of the strengths are that you have, and also areas where you might want to improve along the way as well.
Frank.
Hey, Kevin, what you were just saying made me think about something else, and a question that came up in Slack that has gotten a number of comments thus far. And the question is that we can go around, people can share is, hey, how did you get into leadership? Is what you just said is, you know, hey, I look for other opportunities to practice and get those skills and develop those skills. I've got you guys will have to forgive the story here, but you know, I have a friend who reports to the CISO at this large university, and he's got there's 5 direct reports to the CISO. That CISO has already said that, look, I'm old, I'm going to retire at some point in time, and all of you 5 are in the running to potentially be my replacement. Well, pros and cons. Pros is that there's some transparency, but the con is that that naturally creates some conflict between and competition between those 5 peers. Not all that good. So my friend is telling me the situation. He thinks, you know, justified, you know, arguably so, that hey, maybe he might be in the running because of what he's been doing and his relationship with the CISO and so on. So aside from all of the details of the personal politics, I said, well, you know, what can you do to act like you're already in the role without stepping on everybody else's toes? How can you add some value? And so as part of brainstorming, we said, look, you know, you can say, well, what are the top priorities and problems for your CISO? And try to give him some information or insight or suggestions into those. So he did things like, oh, well, I see you've got this meeting with this key business partner. Hey, I prepared a, you know, half-page talking points, just so you know, I did a little bit of research. You can use it or not use it, right? So you're kind of acting as if you've already got the job. And truth be told, if I look back across my career, the question is, how did you get into leadership? Is I was actually already doing that job before I formally got the job for some period of time. Now, we can also say maybe, hey, that's not the best, is you should be in that job if you're already doing it. But, you know, hey, we know that there's differences in the way that the world works. So part of it is just looking for those opportunities for yourself and just kind of trying to do it first and see if you actually like it even. But I'm curious, what do you guys think, and what's been your experiences? Hey, Naomi, this hand thing is really working out.
I love this hand thing. And Jason was the leader there. So one thing I like to say, like, if you don't have the opportunities, I love what you said, Frank, you find the opportunities within work. However, sometimes that's not always possible. So what I do like to tell people is, like, try to be a youth coach or a referee or something where you have to, like, be in charge of a large group of people. It is crazy experience. So I was a referee for high school volleyball, club volleyball for like over a decade. And this is where I learned how to do, like, literally managing screaming people in your face, how to stay calm under pressure, great for incident response, how to manage a million things happening at once. So these are just the kind of practice that I needed. It took me 10 years to get that experience, but it really helped me. Youth coaching is another one. If you ever want to try that, lovely experience, but really sets you up for great leadership.
Yeah, I think those are good points. And, you know, Frank, my approach, if I was in your friend's situation, would not be to ingratiate myself to the CISO who's on his way out the door, but to ingratiate myself to the business that will influence those decisions, right? They are putting far more pressure on all the decision makers and the CISO's boss, to be completely honest with you. So align with them, help them, serve them, be on their cool list, right? And they will advocate for you in rooms that you're not in, and even rooms that the CISO is not in. And that's how I would go about finding myself in that position. It's politics, but it's the way it works.
I would say it's politics, and it's also influence too. Some people they hate the P word, you know, oh, I don't do politics, but it's really about expanding your impact and influence. And so when you are looking for a leadership role, or you're trying to just test drive it just to see, you know, one of the things I recommend, you know, people do is take advantage of opportunities where you can lead without that leadership title, which is, working within your teams, within your organization, some of your peers, and look for opportunities to create greater efficiencies, to notice some things that can be improved upon, and take those kind of initiatives. And no, you're not trying to bark orders and tell people what to do, but you're really looking to build cohesiveness within the team. And so being able to do that, identify those things that you can make more efficient, and create just greater harmony within the team. I mean, those are all indicators of leadership qualities. And if you're able to corral the team like that, then that could be an indicator that you're destined for a leadership role. So that's one of the things I would recommend as well.
Jason, you're on mute. Got the hand figured out, but not the mute button.
Not the mute button. A tactic I've used, especially if for people up and coming, and I've supported them in this, is the deputy title. Ask your CISO for the deputy. If anybody, CISO is just a title. There are multiple levels. There's managers that are CISOs, director, senior director, VP, SVP. CISO is nothing. It's like working at Zappos. It's, what's your title? I'm a CISO. Same thing for deputy CISO. So most orgs are comfortable with, sure, you can call him whatever you want. He's still a senior analyst or a senior engineer, but that's great to get on your title, because then it goes on your resume, it goes on your LinkedIn profile, and suddenly you're getting hit on searches. And hey, I'm looking for an entry-level CISO. Next thing you know, so that's a good tactic for some people. Go for deputy CISO.
I was a deputy CISO before I was a CISO, so I can attest to that. Mark.
All right, the hand's working. I like it. Also, may I add just a couple of things that I think I'm very big in mentors. Somebody who was in that position, who was already a leader, should be able to provide a lot more guidance and support in that area. And the second thing, unfortunately, this may not be something where you are today with your current role, but the leadership role is not going to come to you, and just sitting maybe waiting for a leadership role isn't necessarily going to happen. You're going to have to go out and you're going to have to, look for it, and you're going to be hungry for it. And the more that you want it, it will land at some point in time.
Barbie.
I wanted to kind of extend, I like I feel like this is very natural flow in the conversation, but I wanted to expand on that as well. I mean, a lot of you have touched on this, but when we're looking to go into leadership, there's a dynamic shift in how we have to approach things, because leadership position is a lot different than a technical position. And so as you're moving through the different elements, you're working with different parts of the team, you're working with different parts of the business. And so your position and your responsibilities shift quite a bit as you move through those layers. So one of the things that one of the reasons why I think that it's more beneficial when you get that experience beforehand, and why we end up having to do it before we actually get the title, is because there is a transitional period there. It's not just, I'm going to put down the technical. I'm no longer going to be responsible for just me. I'm going to be responsible for a whole team of people that are now, I'm responsible for all their results, not just me. And I'm responsible for making sure that they're successful. That's an entirely different skill set. And if you don't have some kind of soft period there, if you're not doing it either outside of work, inside of work, I mean, there's tons of opportunities. You can take up board positions, you can do organizations, you can, coach the Little League or things to that nature. But if you're not building those skill sets and you try to take a leadership position, all of a sudden you're doing a lot of things that you've never had to be responsible for. And that shift is big. And then as you continue to move up, that shift continues to change. So when you move from a technical role into a leadership role, and then your core team that's around you is still, say you're in a technical lane, it's still technical, you're still having conversations you're comfortable in. It's still the leaders that you've been comfortable with within that IT area. But as you start to move up those rungs, you're going to start looking at, okay, now I have to think about finance. Now I have to think about how this impacts the other business units. How is it impacting commercial? How is it going to impact our value propositions? How am I going to get at the table for those things? That was kind of what I was talking about earlier. But as you move up through that system, it changes. And so you kind of have to see it before you can do it. So providing that value back to the business. And I love the point about not necessarily even that CISO at that point isn't where it's at. It's the business that you're working with that's going to be where it's at.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a ton of questions now. So some of your questions may not make the cut here. A couple of them are around the lifespan of a CISO, or why do CISOs only last 2 to 3 years? Curious what your guys' thoughts are on that.
I was very curious about that question too, because a number of people here on the session have had recent changes as well. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of factors, right? Part of it is that in the last 5 years or so, there's been an explosion in new opportunities. Every organization, company realizes that they need a security leader. So now there's, there's more grass always on the other side. Maybe it's not necessarily greener, but there's more opportunities for sure.
I'll go first as someone that made a recent change. Yeah, the grass is sometimes greener on the other side, but I always say it could be greener because there's more manure, right? But the reality is there are more opportunities, but I think a lot of CISOs are in search of psychological safety as well. All right, depending on where you are, you don't know if they're gonna have your back if the bad thing occurs. You have taken steps to try to prevent the bad thing from occurring, and the culture may not be where you think it needs to be, and you don't see that progression. And before it does occur, and hopefully long enough before it occurs so people don't think you left when it occurred, right? Because in the court of public opinion, you can't really defend yourself. A lot of times CISOs are in pursuit of being in a safe space, because many do get completely crucified online and have a really hard time revamping their careers. So those are some of the reasons.
You mentioned that organizational support, senior leadership support. Somebody in chat mentioned earlier that the chief scapegoat officer, and trying to understand are we in that position or not, or did it develop inadvertently into that position? But there's been various surveys over the years that the average tenure of a CISO is anywhere from 1.5 to 3 years, right? Have you guys seen that? Do you guys have different data? Now, why is it so short? I would say 2 years, that's relatively short. You jump into a large enterprise, how much can you really move the needle? How much is that sustainable in terms of the program you're building, if what you do in 2 years? Because 2 years later, the new CISO is going to come in, and what are they going to do? The exact same assessment, the exact same revamp, the exact same tweaks to the plan, right? That you might have done when you first got there, to put their stamp on it. So yeah, why do you guys think it's such a short tenure?
Have you guys heard the 3 envelope story for CISOs? All right, so there's a story, and this actually really did happen. A CISO left, and when he was leaving, he left 3 envelopes for his successor. And he said, open these, in order. And the first envelope, it said, welcome to being CISO. Hope you enjoy the organization. If you ever run into trouble, open up envelope 2. And then he opened up envelope 2, and he said, blame me for all the things that went wrong. And if you have any more trouble, go to envelope 3. And then he went to envelope 3, and envelope 3 said, restructure and create a transformation program to improve security. And then there was a 4th envelope that he didn't realize was there. He found it, and it said, if you have found this 4th envelope, that means it's time to find another job, right? And effectively, it's saying that is what's going to happen. Things are going to occur, and this is the progression and how things go. And typically that happens in about 3 years. So I guess that's why. But I'm curious what other people think.
So I do agree, but there's also different types of leaders. So that may be a part of it, where what part of your career are you at, and what type of CISO are you? Are you a CISO that's going to come in? Do you like to fix the bad? Do you like to build? Do you like to maintain? Like, what is it that your passion is as a leader? And I think we see that because we get a CISO that comes in and they're like, oh, I want to build the thing. And then you get a CISO that comes in and they're like, oh, a bad thing happened, I can totally fix it. And you have a CISO that comes in and it's like, let's let's just maintain, let's just keep this going. And so these different types of leaders are important to the life cycle of a security program, because those passions, those aspirations are going to match appropriately. I'm not saying that's always the case, but I do think it's something to keep in mind, though.
One thing as well could also just be the culture of the company. Sometimes you don't really feel that from the interview, and you start sitting in a role as a leader, and after a few months you start realizing, hey, is the company going to support me as well? And some companies, many of you are probably well aligned to companies that take security quite seriously and it ends up being a really high priority. And then others, no matter what the leader may try to do, the company may not take security as seriously. And that's also something I've noticed as well. They contribute many variables, but may contribute to some of the change some CISOs make along the way.
Yeah, oh, Jerich, now you're muted and I get to talk over you. Great. I'm gonna add on real quick. One of the things that I look for in CISO, and really, honestly, it's any leadership position, back to the theme of leadership, is the autonomy. Daniel Pink book called Drive. We're pitching so many books. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose are these three things every employee and a CISO needs. Autonomy to me is number one. As CISO, am I going to have the autonomy over my budget, my personnel, my program, my team to get what I need done? I know there's financial constraints, but let me work within those constraints myself, and I determine what I'm going to cut back on and where I'm going to apply resources into risk. Not you telling me go cut training program from my employees because we have an overall budget of 100,000. Those kind of decisions. So autonomy is important to me, and one of the biggest things I look for. And it's a quote, I think it was Parcells said, "If you want me to cook dinner, you got to let me shop for the groceries." Absolutely true.
That was good and worth me being on mute on accident. So we have time for maybe two more questions. There's a lot of talk around whether CISO should be technical or business leaders. I'd love to kind of hear you guys' thoughts on this, because there have been some polarizing views on this one.
Is both an option? Both. Yes, I think they should be both. Good translators for the business up and down, good translators for the technology folks from the business. So you're sitting right in the middle, being translators for both the business and the technical folks.
Yeah, it definitely, it definitely helps to, be able to have both, but definitely I would side with the business. I mean, you have to have that skill set if you want to see at the table. Jerich, you talk about it all the time as well. To be able to be seen as a partner, with business as well. So those are really good skill sets to have. I would agree with Naomi though. I mean, it's definitely good to have both, especially if you can be dangerous on the IT side as well.
Yeah, I'm going with both too. We're right in the middle. It absolutely, you need both, but so many times I see one or the other. I'll see too technical and they don't think they need the business. And I'm like, no, somebody wrote in the Slack channel earlier on the same topic about, you got to explain things to executives like they're a fifth grader. Many people get upset at that. No, they're not fifth graders. Well, in a way they are. The CFO doesn't go explain, weighted average cost of capital to, different teams. He just says, look, here's the numbers and here's the budget. They break it down. So that's, you have to have that ability, and to understand the tech enough, you got to be able to explain it back and to teach it. So you got to understand technology, but it's the business skills, in my opinion, that in my experience, which is very limited, that I see most lacking out there. People think, I don't need to go take a finance class. I don't need to take public speaking. I don't need to understand how to use PowerPoint to tell my story. Yes, you do.
Yeah, I think so. Coming from the technical side, as you grow up through leadership, I think obviously both, but I think as you grow through leadership, you need more of that business skill set to be more successful. But being able to relate and understand from the technical side, it certainly does help a lot, especially with the teams. And especially when incidents come up, because some of your incidents can get very technical. And if you can understand at that level, it certainly, helps a lot more too. But then your job is translating that into the business. So now you're a translator as well.
Yeah, I think both is the safe answer here. But I also think that there are levels to it, right? So if you're starting a security program, you may need to be even more technical than someone that's taken over a security program. And the expectation is, as you move up in your career, you're going to become less technical, right? You're not going to be able to necessarily go into the firewall and configure it like you were able to before, but you should know what it should look like. You should know what the expectations are. You should be technical enough in that regard to have those conversations And I usually use the analogy, I may not be able to hammer the nail, I may not be able to turn the wrench the right way, but I know what good looks like when it's all said and done, and I can make sure that my people don't bullshit me. Right. Ultimately, that's what it's about. And then I need to be able to communicate and translate that up to the left and to the right. And if you can do those things, then you'll be okay. Kevin.
I think Jason was first. If you want to go first, Jason.
Okay. Jason.
Polite, thanks. Yeah, you got to understand concepts, technical concepts. That's why I go to conferences. I'm talking technology. I understand CNAP, CASM, some of the new technologies. You got to understand the concepts. And still to this day, I can't, because of our, and most of us, I think, have years of experience. It's that years of experience that we just know through intuition of technology that I don't actually need to go read the manual. I've worked through an Active Directory. I get how the directory structure is going to work or how email flows to understand the new flashy things that are happening. But yeah, it's concepts to me is the most important with technology these days. I may not be able to go in and code my way out of a paper bag, but I understand software coding concepts.
You may have taken Mark's answer from him because he took his hand down.
I think that was Kevin, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm looking at the wrong person. You moved up. Someone came in the screen and you moved.
Mark's the guy with the best accent. So you can never forget Mark. I feel like he's king of the North, and I'm rewatching Game of Thrones. So I can understand why you want to hear him.
Sorry about that, Kevin.
No worries at all. One thing I was going to say is, hey, if you find the need, especially in the executive leadership role, to get hands to keyboard, it actually may be a good mentor opportunity for those folks on your team. So the first thing I try to think of is, hey, I'd love to get into the weeds, and it's sort of my comfort zone to begin with anyway. But hey, if you're in charge of a team and that team is sort of yearning to learn a little bit more about the technology or to get hands-on, it really is a great opportunity to not only delegate, but also to mentor so that person knows or that group knows some of those great technical skills. And again, to help support the group as time goes on as well. So I think it's a natural next step, especially as the leader, you're going to be able to identify who really wants to do some of those hands to keyboard opportunities.
Right on, right on. This is the last question. This is for everybody. You guys get to just give one answer. We'll start off with you, Kevin, since you're last. Influence or title? Which one would you prefer?
Influence. It's such a great thing within cybersecurity to have the influence because, hey, we sort of need it, especially, and I know a lot of folks are talking about during incidents. We may have to bring in folks that we don't talk to on a day-to-day basis, such as legal or marketing or communications. And I know it's a tenet that we hear a lot within cybersecurity conferences, but it's so true. You definitely don't want to meet people for the first time at 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday during an incident. And they want to know your name, you want to know their name, and you want to make sure that people really want to help you be successful, and then it's also going to help your team be successful on the way. So definitely influence.
Agreed. Beatrice, we haven't heard from you in a little while.
That's because I had to drop and come back. I'd say influence to piggyback, but also influence, especially in a matrixed, in a very complex or complicated or just matrix environment that we work in, that helps a lot more, where we might not know everything. We can always Google. It's about how we leverage what we know and how we trust and those relationships to get a little bit further.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I think I lean more towards influence, but sometimes you need that title to get that influence. So, definitely the influence, but sometimes, if you don't have the title, you may not get the influence you need to get through. So definitely influence, but I think it comes with both sometimes. So you might need that title as well.
That's fair. Jason.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here. And I am going to go with title. And in fact, and I'm not trying to plug my podcast, but my 2 episodes ago, me and my co-host debated this very topic, and it's a great discussion. We took both sides. But in the real world, all the influence in the world doesn't help. It's title. Old CTO of mine would once say, dude, they do things because you get things done through influence. And I call shenanigans. They're doing it because you're CTO. And I've seen that so much with my cybersecurity team. They're like, I can't get anywhere with this person. I've emailed them, I've Slacked them. And especially in today's virtual world, email, Slack, ping, nothing. They won't respond because you don't have that title. As soon as they see an email from me, Chief Information Security Officer, guess what happens? So yes, you got to have influence because it's just how you operate in this world is be nice, but I'm going to go with title.
Barbie.
So I'm going to go with both. And the reason why I'm going to say both is because you're all right. But specifically, I've done both. I've had to lead without title, and I've had to play at very big tables as not titled. And in those scenarios, I had to have a lot of influence, and it took a lot of effort to do that. I absolutely, for me personally, I don't care about title, but other people do, including the other people that you're working with and your clients. So when you're having those conversations, if you're going to come in and talk to your client about a breach and you don't have the title to back you to do that, sometimes questions are going to come and they're going to say, who am I talking to? Why am I talking to them? Instead of, oh, I know who I'm talking to because I can recognize that title. So there is both, of course, is important, but we can't do some things without title. I agree, Jason.
Naomi.
Oh gosh, I was going to say influence because that feels idealistic. And then Jason made me change it to title because that feels more efficient. And then Barbie made me change it to both because I just like both. So I don't even know anymore, Jerich. I'm just all over the place. I would say like just to get things done and you don't know the person, title. Yeah, absolutely. Send that email. I agree with you, Jason. For influence though, if you have like the peer-to-peer title, like if you and some other person is the same, like you can't throw your title around. People are going to be like laughing in your face, right? So you got to make friends. It just depends. Oh, there's my answer. It depends.
All right, Frank.
Well, if I could just jump in because I have to get ready to get out of here. I'll go with influence and title. You need both, but if you don't have the title, you got to use influence and you got to use those skills in order to get that influence as well. So, in order to make stuff happen. So that's my take on it. You all take care. I got to get out of here.
Thank you, Eric.
Bye-bye.
Frank, you're last, and then I'll close it out.
All right. Hey, appreciate it. So, hey, I'm going to go out with the cop-out answer is that it depends, right? It's like, hey, well, what should you do? Should you raise, bet, or fold? Well, it depends on numerous other factors. The reason that leadership is hard and the reason why CISOs, I think, have a hard job is because a lot of us, not all, but a lot of us come up from a technical background. We focus on the black and white, the technical aspects. And when we get into these leadership roles, we don't realize how we need to decipher the environment around us and continuously decipher the environment around us. So from day to day, within the day, we might need to leverage our positional power, or we might need to leverage some of our personal power. And depending on the situation with our team, they might respect us a little bit more if we can talk the talk of what they're talking about and understand that. But with other key stakeholders who value some of that organizational structure, it might be some of those other elements. The hard part is figuring out when to leverage what.
All right, so I'm gonna say it's somewhat. I won't say it depends. I'll say that the title is what gives you the opportunity to develop influence in many cases, but ultimately the title will help you when you're trying to get things done. We'll say below you with your peers, with your subordinates, or whoever's reporting to you. That's where the title comes into play. But influence is what you need when you're going up. They don't care about your title if you're not someone that's adding value or you're not someone that's helping. I've seen many cases where the CIO was pushed to the side and the head of IT architecture was brought in the room because that's who they trusted, right? So it really matters about who do the leaders and the execs feel have the answer, who do they feel that they can trust, and that is probably what matters most. But I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I will say that title can potentially bring in the conversation of hierarchy, right? Your title means nothing if you're under like 10 other people, right? So the title, I think Jason brought it up or someone brought it up earlier. You can have that title. I mean, banks throw out VPs to, people with nobody reporting to them, right? So it can't just be title. It also has to be where in the organization that title is sitting. All of you guys, this was an amazing conversation. Have not had this much input on the show before. The AMA format really worked out well. I did not know until the questions started coming in if it was going to. But thank you guys for your time. Thank you for contributing to the community. All of you out there that stuck it out with us this entire time, thank you. You guys have made this probably the best leadership summit that we've had, and we thank you guys all for it.